Listen to me. Some of you are losing sleep over a future that hasn't even arrived yet. You're carrying the weight of problems that don't exist. And the reason you feel exhausted is because you're fighting battles that only live in your imagination. Today, I want you to breathe. I want you to stand tall, because the future is not your enemy. The future is simply waiting for you to show up with clarity and courage. I came here today to tell you something simple, but it might just shift the way you move through life. You don't have to fear what's ahead. You don't have to keep replaying every worst case scenario in your mind. Life often opens doors in places you least expect. And when you stop worrying about what might happen, you give yourself room to grow into who you were meant to become. So today we're going to talk about stepping out of fear, stepping out of anxiety, and stepping into a mindset that frees you to take your next step with confidence. Your mind creates pressure the future didn't ask for, and most of the time you don't even notice it happening. You wake up with a tight chest, not because something went wrong today, but because your thoughts ran ahead of you and built a story that drained your energy before the day even started. It's amazing how the mind can turn simple possibilities into heavy burdens. One small concern grows into a chain of imagined problems, and suddenly you're living inside a storm you created in your own head. What makes this so exhausting is that the future itself is neutral. It hasn't made a demand on you. It hasn't placed a weight on your shoulders. It hasn't chosen a path or handed you a challenge. Yet your mind tries to prepare for every outcome at the same time. It rehearses conversations that will never happen. It predicts obstacles that might never show up. It builds scenarios that look real but have nothing to do with the life you're actually living. And the more you feed those thoughts, the heavier they feel. This pressure tricks you into believing you're being responsible. It makes you think you're staying ahead. But what you're really doing is stretching yourself thin. You're fighting shadows. You're trying to solve problems that only exist in your imagination. And that kind of pressure doesn't make you stronger. It steals your focus. It pulls you away from the moment you're in. It convinces you that the next day, the next step, the next season is something to fear instead of something to grow into. When you slow down and look at what's actually happening in your life right now, you start to realize that the weight you feel rarely comes from real events. It comes from thought after thought piling up until your emotions respond as if danger is already here. But the moment you return to the present, the pressure starts to fade. Your breathing settles. Your mind gets clearer. You begin to see that the future didn't place a load on you. You placed it on yourself by imagining every version of tomorrow all at once. The power comes from recognizing this pattern, because once you see it, you can interrupt it. You can stop giving energy to thoughts that don't serve you. You can step back into the moment that's actually happening and deal with what's real instead of wrestling with what's not. That's where strength is built. That's where clarity comes from. That's where you finally feel the pressure lifting. Fear grows when you give it attention, not when the future gets harder. It often starts as a small thought, something quiet and harmless, but the moment you begin to entertain it, it takes root. You replay it, you magnify it, and before long it becomes louder than your confidence. Fear feeds on repetition. The more you circle around the same worry, the stronger it gets. It doesn't matter if the situation hasn't changed. Your focus gives fear its shape. Your energy gives it strength. Most people think fear rises because life becomes more difficult. They assume the pressure increased, the challenge expanded, or circumstances took a turn. But if you look closely, you'll notice the fear usually grew long before anything in the real world shifted. It grew because your attention stayed locked on the worst possible outcome. You kept imagining how things could fall apart instead of how they could unfold in your favor. You weren't reacting to reality. You were reacting to a story you wrote in your mind. Fear loves imagination. It uses your creativity against you. It paints pictures that look convincing. It whispers outcomes that sound possible. And when you focus on those images long enough, your body reacts as if they're happening right now. Your breathing changes, your energy drops, your confidence shrinks, not because the moment is dangerous, but because your attention is feeding the fear instead of grounding you in what's actually true. When you shift your attention, fear loses its grip. The moment you stop rehearsing the same anxious thought, it begins to fade. When you bring your focus back to the step in front of you instead of the step 10 miles ahead, the noise quiets down. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about refusing to let fear dominate the space where clarity should live. Your energy is powerful. Whatever you give it to grows. If you give it to fear, fear expands. If you give it to calm, calm strengthens. If you give it to movement, movement builds momentum. Fear can't feed itself. It needs your attention. It needs your imagination. It needs your agreement. Without those things, it becomes smaller, lighter, easier to manage. The future isn't what inflames fear. Your focus does. And when you learn to direct that focus toward what supports you instead of what scares you, the fear that once felt overwhelming starts to shrink. You realize it was never the size of the fear that held you back. It was the amount of attention you were giving it. Most of what you worry about never actually happens, yet it still manages to drain your energy as if it already did. Your mind can create vivid outcomes that feel so real you react to them with the same tension you'd feel in an actual crisis. You might be sitting in a quiet room, but inside you're dealing with 100 possible futures that have no proof behind them. It's a strange thing how the mind can pull you into problems that don't exist and convince you they're right in front of you. When you look back on your life, you can probably count the moments where things truly went wrong, and you'll notice something interesting. The majority of the fears you carried never turned into reality. They only lived in your thoughts. You worried about conversations that never happened. You stressed over outcomes that never showed up. You prepared for disappointments that never came. Meanwhile, the real challenges you faced were often the ones you didn't see coming, which proves something important. Worry doesn't prepare you. It only exhausts you. Your mind tends to magnify uncertainty. It fills the unknown with the worst version of events, not because that's what's likely, but because the mind tries to create a sense of control by predicting everything. It believes that if it imagines every bad scenario, you'll somehow be safer. But all it really does is keep you stuck in fear. You spend time bracing for storms that never form. You react to possibilities instead of facts. You tighten your whole life around something that might not even be a threat. When you start to separate what's real from what's imagined, you gain a kind of freedom you didn't know you were missing. You begin to see that worry has been robbing you of peace without giving you anything useful in return. It didn't fix anything. It didn't prevent anything. It didn't help you move forward. It only made the present heavier than it needed to be. There's power in recognizing that most of your fears are just thoughts, not truths. They don't deserve the amount of attention you've been giving them. They don't need to guide your decisions. They don't need to shape your mood. When you catch yourself drifting into the same anxious patterns, remind yourself that your mind has a habit of writing stories that never happen. And the moment you stop feeding those stories, they lose their influence. You begin to step into your days with more ease, more clarity, and a calmer spirit because you finally understand that the things you feared the most rarely ever come to pass. Focus on the step in front of you, not the staircase, because the staircase will always feel too big when you're standing at the bottom of it. Your mind wants the full picture. It wants to know every turn before you take the first one. It wants to see the entire path laid out and guaranteed before you move. But life doesn't work that way. Growth doesn't work that way. Most of the time, you only get enough clarity for the next step, not the whole journey. And if you wait for the full plan, you'll stay stuck in the same place, overwhelmed by everything that hasn't happened yet. When you look too far ahead, the distance discourages you. You start imagining everything that could go wrong. You see the long climb. You see the challenges. You see the unknowns. And suddenly the step you were supposed to take right now feels too small, too slow, or too meaningless. But that single step is exactly where your power is. It's the only part of the journey you can actually influence in the moment. The staircase will take care of itself when you keep placing one foot in front of the other. There's something freeing about narrowing your attention. When you focus on the step in front of you, you stop carrying the weight of 10 future decisions. You stop trying to solve problems you don't have yet. You stop trying to control outcomes that are still forming. You give your mind room to breathe. You give yourself permission to grow at a pace that feels real and grounded instead of overwhelming. Every major change in your life started with one small action, one decision, one shift in focus, one moment of courage. You didn't arrive at those breakthroughs by tackling everything at once. You got there by doing what you could with what you had right where you were. That's how transformation actually happens, not through huge leaps, but through consistent steps. When you learn to trust the step in front of you, your confidence grows because you're no longer trying to manage the entire journey. You're showing up for the one moment you can control. And with each step you take, the staircase becomes less intimidating. You start to see progress. You start to feel movement. You realize the climb wasn't as impossible as it looked from the bottom. You don't need to know the whole path. You just need the courage to take the next step. And when you keep taking those steps one at a time, the path slowly reveals itself in ways you couldn't have planned, but were always prepared for. Clarity comes from action, not overthinking, and this is where many people get stuck without even realizing it. You sit with an idea, a dream, or a decision you need to make, and instead of moving toward it, you start analyzing it from every angle. You replay scenarios, you imagine outcomes, you debate with yourself, you turn the same thought around so many times that it loses shape. What started as a simple choice becomes something heavy and confusing, not because it's impossible, but because you've spent more time thinking than doing. Your mind will always find reasons to wait. It will remind you of what could go wrong. It will tell you that you need more information. It will convince you to plan a little longer, prepare a little more, fix a little more before you step forward. But clarity doesn't show up in the planning stage. It doesn't arrive while you're sitting still. It grows when you move. Every action teaches you something. Every step gives you feedback. Every attempt reveals the next direction a little more clearly. When you finally take action, even a small one, the fog begins to lift. You realize the thing you feared wasn't as complicated as it looked in your mind. You start to see what works and what doesn't. You gain momentum. You feel more grounded because you're engaged with life instead of trapped in your thoughts. Movement creates understanding. Experience shapes wisdom. And each action makes the next one easier because you're no longer guessing, you're learning. Overthinking steals that opportunity. It traps you in a loop where you confuse thinking with progress. But progress only happens in motion. You don't need to have the perfect plan before you begin. You don't need to see every step clearly. You just need to move in the direction that feels honest and meaningful. Once you do, the next piece of clarity will appear when you need it. Taking action doesn't guarantee everything goes smoothly, but it guarantees growth. It gives you confidence that thinking alone can't give you. It reminds you that you're capable of handling what comes, not because you predicted every detail, but because you showed up and learned from real experience. Clarity isn't something you wait for. It's something you create by stepping forward. And the moment you choose movement over mental noise, your path starts to make more sense, one lived moment at a time. The future becomes lighter when you trust your ability to handle the present, because most of the weight you feel comes from doubting yourself, not from what's actually ahead. When you believe you can face what's in front of you, the pressure of tomorrow starts to soften. You stop imagining yourself as unprepared or overwhelmed, and you start seeing yourself as someone who can adapt, learn, and grow through whatever comes. That shift changes everything. It doesn't remove challenges, but it changes the way you face them. The present is where your strength lies. It's where you make decisions, take action, and build resilience. When you focus on handling this moment, this day, this step, you give yourself proof that you're capable. Each time you solve a problem, each time you stay calm in uncertainty, each time you choose growth instead of fear, you are stacking confidence inside yourself without even realizing it. Over time, that confidence becomes a kind of quiet power. It tells you, even without words, that you can navigate what's coming because you're already navigating what's here. Trusting yourself doesn't mean knowing everything. It means believing you can learn what you need when the time comes. It means accepting that you don't need to have all the answers right now. You only need enough courage to face what's in front of you. When you do that, the future stops looking like a mountain and starts looking like a path you can walk one step at a time. So many people fear the future because they think they won't be strong enough when it arrives. But strength doesn't show up all at once. It grows with every experience, every choice, every moment you stay present instead of drifting into what-if thinking. When you stay grounded in the now, you're not running from tomorrow, you're preparing for it in the most natural way possible. The future feels heavy when you try to carry it before it arrives. But when you trust yourself, you don't have to carry tomorrow today. You meet it when it gets here with the same strength you're building right now. That makes the future lighter, not because it becomes easier, but because you stop doubting your ability to handle it. Once you understand that you can face the present, the future no longer looks like something to fear. It becomes something you can walk toward with calm, clarity, and steady confidence.